there was a point where he was delusional and having kind of episodes that were drug related, but brushes with the law and flirting with kind of homelessness and it was unsustainable. He'd been through rehab a couple of times unsuccessfully, and looked like it was just getting worse.
For years, Ron Howard looked like the one Hollywood legend who stayed clear of all that behind-the-scenes chaos. Always smiling, always calm, always the golden boy turned master director with a resume that speaks for itself. But what people didn't see was that quiet storm he carried, the unspoken thoughts, the memories, the truths he kept tucked away while everyone else saw perfection. Now, after the heartbreaking news about Rob Reiner's passing shook the entertainment world, Ron has started opening up, and what he's saying is stirring everyone up. He's talking about the real Hollywood, the silent competition, the hidden emotions, and the kind of mutual respect that doesn't always show up on camera. The situation surrounding Reiner's loss clearly struck something deep within him, pushing Ron to think about how fragile everything truly is, how fast things can change, and how even the brightest stars can have complicated histories with one another. What's wild is how personal this feels. Ron's long-kept silence is finally cracking, and his words carry weight. He's hinting at emotions and memories tied directly to Rob Reiner, and people are starting to realize there was more to their connection than anyone ever knew.
Today I'm here to announce that our office will be filing charges against Nick Reiner, who is accused of killing his parents, actor-director Rob Reiner, and photographer-producer Michelle Singer Reiner.
The story of Ron Howard, born March 1st, 1954 in Duncan, Oklahoma, suddenly feels richer and heavier than ever. Before fame even made sense to him, his parents, actor Rance Howard and actress Jean Spiegel, raised him inside a world where creativity ruled, but discipline never took a back seat. It was a mix of imagination, long hours, and that constant Hollywood uncertainty. That's the world that shaped Ron, but also the same world that bonded him, in ways no one expected, to someone like Rob Reiner. And what he's revealing now might just change how people see both of them forever. Before most kids could even say their first words, Ron Howard was already standing under the hot lights of a movie set. At just 18 months old, he appeared in Frontier Woman, completely unaware that he had stepped into a lifetime contract with the camera. That one tiny role marked the beginning of something that would follow him forever, a career that never really gave him space to step away, even when he wanted to. By the late 1950s, the Howard family packed up and headed to California, chasing the booming dream of television. From that moment, the idea of normal life basically disappeared. Dinner tables doubled as script stations, and his dad, Rance Howard, juggled military duties with constant auditions. Little Ron, still losing baby teeth, was already running lines like a pro. Instead of riding bikes with kids down the street, his playground became sound stages, his childhood wrapped in studio lights instead of sunshine.
People would ask me from the publishing world, did I ever think I would do an autobiography or memoir? And I always said, no, don't think so. But I asked Tom one day, and he said, well, if you ever do it, focus on your childhood.
Years later, Ron would call those early days a golden cage. Safe, yes, but so lonely it almost sparkled with emptiness. He had the security of fame, yet he was locked in a world built by adults, missing out on those simple moments other kids took for granted. Then came the turning point. October 3rd, 1960, The Andy Griffith Show premiered, and 6-year-old Ron instantly became America's beloved Opie Taylor. Overnight, he turned into the nation's idea of pure innocence, a symbol every family adored. But behind that glowing image, there was a quiet little boy finishing homework inside a tiny studio room at Daisy Lou, listening to real laughter and play drift in from outside. His father tried to shield him as best he could, fighting for better scripts, keeping him grounded and always reminding him, never act cute, just act honest. That single lesson shaped Ron's entire artistic soul. But even with a father's love and protection, nothing could erase that ache of being the child everyone adored on screen, yet not truly his own off it. And somewhere during all that pressure and spotlight, Rob Reiner was also rising in the same industry, Another young soul learning how fame can lift you up and quietly box you in. All that pressure, the lights, the eyes watching, the weight of being America's son, it didn't just fade away when the cameras stopped rolling. Those quiet anxieties stacked up year after year until they became part of who Ron Howard was. Now, looking back decades later, Ron openly admits that the wounds from those early years never fully healed. They followed him into adulthood, shaping how he saw fame, family, and even the struggles of people like Rob Reiner, who knew that same strange mix of admiration and isolation all too well. As Ron stepped into his teen years, the world saw nothing but success. But behind that glowing image was a young man carrying the emotional weight of someone twice his age. When The Andy Griffith Show wrapped in April 1968, Ron was only 14, but he'd already lived 8 seasons inside a perfectly written world that wasn't real. He'd grown up surrounded by caring adults on set, yet missed out on the beautiful chaos that real teenage life brings. The mistakes, the freedom, the rebellion that shapes who you are. His education was split right down the middle, half in actual classrooms in Burbank, half between takes with tutors hovering beside rolling dollies. He studied math while grips moved cameras inches from his desk. Lunch wasn't in a cafeteria with friends his age, but with Andy Griffith, Don Knotts, and the stage crew. Those moments were full of love, but also a constant reminder that he wasn't living the same story as everyone else.
We were the #1 show in television, and yet Andy wanted to move on. And that's what was going to happen. And I was okay with it. You know, I wasn't like all year tormented by this.
And then came that unforgettable moment during The Music Man in 1962. Ron was only 8, staring down a dance scene he just couldn't get right. He turned to Shirley Jones and whispered, "I can't do it, Shirley." She gave him comfort, helped calm his nerves, and the crew cleverly hid his missteps by shooting him from the knees up. The audience saw confidence, sweetness, and charm. But inside, it was fear and pressure all mixed together. It's stories like these that make Ron's later empathy for Rob Reiner so powerful. Both men grew up in the glow of the spotlight. Both had fathers guiding their paths, and both learned early on that behind every perfect take, there's a child just trying to breathe. Those quiet anxieties never really left Ron Howard. They just learned how to hide behind a calm smile. Over time, he mastered the art of performing confidence, even when he didn't feel it at all. That skill became his secret armor in Hollywood, helping him survive the chaos, the egos, and the endless expectations. While others like Rob Reiner made headlines for being bold and outspoken, Ron played it cool, studying everything and everyone around him with that steady focus he was known for. Then came Happy Days in 1974, the next huge chapter. Ron was just 19 when he walked into Gary Marshall's office, having no idea he was about to step into another role that would lock him into America's heart all over again. As Richie Cunningham, he became the country's favorite boy next door, polite, loyal, and impossibly wholesome. But as fans fell in love with Richie, Ron felt the walls closing in. Once again, the image people adored started to box him in, trapping the real him behind that scripted smile. By 1977, at 23, he was still pretending to be a teenager while the entire world outside was changing fast. The headlines were filled with protests. The culture was shifting, and people his age were questioning everything. But Richie Cunningham stayed frozen in a bubble of nostalgia. That disconnect ate at Ron until one day he decided to speak up. He wrote a memo to the ABC network, asking for just one storyline that mentioned the Vietnam War, something real, something that reflected the world people actually lived in. But the request was shut down immediately. That rejection hit hard. The frustration didn't explode. It simmered quietly, turning into a deeper kind of exhaustion.
These are changing times. Relax. So, in their earliest stages, when they might have been able to do something, I think I was a voice kind of telling him to back off as parents. And so those are regrets that I have.
Ron felt invisible behind the character, like he was living someone else's life while his own sat on pause. The longer it went on, the clearer it became. If he wanted to reclaim his voice, to grow, to evolve, to create something that felt real, he had to move behind the camera. And that realization, the one that pushed him from actor to filmmaker, was the same kind of awakening that Rob Reiner would later experience too. Both men searching for their own truth inside a system that loved to keep them frozen in time. Directing wasn't just some dream for Ron Howard. It was his escape route, his way to finally breathe again. After years of being told how to act, what to say, and who to be, getting behind the camera felt like breaking out of a cage. His long journey through fame gave him a deep understanding of what it means to find your true voice, something he shared with people like Rob Reiner, who also discovered themselves through directing, though their styles and public images couldn't have been more different. That long-awaited freedom came in 1977 when Roger Corman made Ron an offer that changed everything. Star in Eat My Dust, and in return direct his own film. It wasn't about chasing another hit or getting more attention. It was about owning his craft for the first time. That film became Grand Theft Auto, a wild car crash comedy he co-wrote with his father, Rance Howard. They had just $62,000 to make it, a shoestring budget by Hollywood standards, but somehow managed to pull off massive stunts, wreck around 70 cars, and turn that small gamble into $15 million at the box office. For the first time ever, Ron felt true creative control, the kind that acting never gave him. It was thrilling, intoxicating, and empowering. But in Hollywood, control always comes with a hidden price tag. Every film became personal. Every detail mattered too much. He obsessed over his work, taking every note, every scene, every outcome to heart. The hits started rolling. Night Shift in 1982, Splash in 1984, then Cocoon, Willow, and Parenthood. Each project elevated his reputation and boosted his budgets. But with every success came higher expectations. Studios began trusting him completely, counting on him to deliver magic every single time. And that trust soon turned into a non-stop, unspoken pressure that followed him everywhere. By the early 90s, Ron wasn't just the kid from Mayberry anymore. He was a powerhouse, a Hollywood name that carried weight. And just like Rob Reiner, he'd stepped into the kind of spotlight that doesn't just shine, it burns if you're not careful. Ron Howard's obsession with control and perfection wasn't just about ego. It was about proving something to himself. That same drive gave him a deep understanding of what other powerhouse directors like Rob Reiner faced behind the camera. The long nights, the pressure to deliver brilliance every single time, and the quiet exhaustion that came with it. Then came 1995, the year that nearly broke him and defined him all at once. Apollo 13 wasn't just another movie, it was a mission of its own.
The next film was Apollo 13, which was all about accuracy and authenticity. And slowly but surely, I just began to find real joy and creativity, ingenuity through the research, through the fact-finding, and then finding ways to use everything that I learned about drama and comedy, for that matter, to sort of present these ideas to audiences in ways that could be really, compelling and entertaining, but rich with detail.
Ron was determined to tell the story of those astronauts with total authenticity. No shortcuts, no fake drama, just the raw truth. He took realism so seriously that the crew filmed a mind-blowing 612 zero-gravity sequences aboard NASA's infamous Vomit Comet, where each moment of weightlessness lasted just 23 seconds. He and his team didn't settle for movie props either. They built mission control from scratch using real NASA panels that cost $1 each. Every light, every switch, every flicker had to be flawless. Nothing less would do. Ron drove himself to the edge, working 18-hour days for 3 straight months, grabbing only a few hours of sleep, refusing to simplify even the most complicated science on screen. But perfection comes with a breaking point. One morning, his body finally said enough. He collapsed right there on set from severe exhaustion and dehydration. The entire production had to stop for a day and a half while he recovered. When Ron finally returned, pale but determined, the cast and crew greeted him wearing shirts that said, "Mission Control." It was their way of saying, "We've got you. We'll follow you through anything." He smiled that calm, humble smile the world knows so well, But deep down, he knew the truth. He'd gone too far. The line between passion and self-destruction had blurred, and he'd crossed it without even noticing. And in that painful realization, he understood something Rob Reiner had faced too, that sometimes the price of brilliance is losing sight of yourself in the process. Ron Howard had turned into the kind of perfectionist who could push himself past the edge without even realizing it. That haunting truth stayed with him for years, not just because of what it did to his health, but because of what it took from the people who mattered most. The lessons from that painful chapter about control, truth, and authenticity reshaped how he saw Hollywood, its power, and its toll on those who chase greatness too hard. So when the heartbreaking news about Rob Reiner's passing hit, it wasn't just sadness that washed over Ron. It was something deeper. He felt the regret, the reflection, the understanding of what relentless dedication can quietly steal from you. Both men had lived under the same creative fire. Both had chased perfection, and both had learned how easily passion could turn into isolation. But even before Reiner's loss, Ron had already lived through his own personal heartbreak, one that still weighs on him like a shadow. The year was 1991, and on paper, everything looked perfect. His daughter Jocelyn had just been born, his career was skyrocketing, and his creative freedom was at an all-time high. He was the director every studio wanted, the name attached to guaranteed success. Then Universal announced a 6-month shoot for Far and Away in Ireland. Ron made a choice he thought he could handle. He left. For half a year, Cheryl, his devoted wife, stayed home raising their newborn twins and their young daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard.
I was married already. We didn't have children yet, but starting to think about a family. And when Cheryl completely supported me turning down the what would have been a huge raise.
Meanwhile, Ron was across the world, buried under endless rewrites, harsh weather, complicated shoots, and non-stop studio pressure. He kept telling himself it was temporary, that the sacrifices were worth it. But deep down, something in him knew he was drifting too far. When he finally came home, the silence in the house said everything. The laughter felt distant, the connection fractured. He realized too late that success had come at a cost he never wanted to pay. That regret, that missed time, that emotional distance is something he's carried ever since. And maybe that's why Rob Reiner's story hit him so hard, because in some ways, it mirrored the pain Ron already knew too well. When Ron Howard walked through the door after that long shoot, the moment that greeted him nearly shattered him. His baby daughter, Jocelyn, didn't recognize him. Bryce, his older little girl, barely reacted. And Cheryl, his rock, his partner, carried an exhaustion so deep it didn't even need words. In 2025, Ron finally admitted that memory broke something inside him. That was the day he realized the cruel truth. All the success, the fame, the awards meant absolutely nothing if it cost him the people he loved most. He made a quiet promise right then, never again. He swore he'd never disappear like that, never let his career take more than it gave. But life doesn't always let promises stick. In 2005, during the grueling reshoots for Cinderella Man, Ron felt that same old pattern creeping back. The sleepless nights returned, the constant decision-making, the pressure to deliver perfection. Once again, he was gone for months, and when he finally came home, he realized his children had grown, not just in height, but in life, while he was away. Cheryl had kept everything together with her usual quiet strength, but even then, he knew she was carrying more than her share. Later, Ron confessed that this second slip forced him to confront something buried deep, a lifelong habit that started back in his childhood acting days. He had always believed he had to say yes to everything, had to go above and beyond every single time, had to prove he deserved his place in the industry. That hunger to be perfect had driven him to greatness, but also to guilt. It wasn't until 2025, on his and Cheryl's 50th anniversary, that Ron finally let his guard down completely. Standing at John Burroughs High School, the place where they first met, he donated a bench in her honor and spoke words that left the crowd silent. He said he would trade every award, every hit film, every single accolade just to get back the lost time with his children. That moment, raw and emotional, showed exactly why the loss of Rob Reiner struck him so hard. Because when Rob's passing made headlines, it wasn't just the end of an era. It reminded Ron of everything he'd fought for, lost, and learned along the way. Both men had lived their dreams under the same blinding light, and both knew how high the real price of that dream could be. Rob Reiner, too, lived his life out loud, passionate, outspoken, and fully committed to both his art and his beliefs. But there are some battles no one can fully control, no matter how powerful they seem. And for Ron Howard, watching Reiner's journey only deepened his own reflection on the people who shaped him long before fame ever found him. Because before the awards, before marriage, before the endless spotlight, there was one relationship that built the very foundation of who Ron became, the quiet, unshakable bond with his younger brother, Clint Howard. To the public, Clint was that unforgettable face, the quirky, lovable actor popping up in everything from Star Trek to Apollo 13. But to Ron, Clint wasn't just a brother. He was proof that someone else truly understood the strange, beautiful, and exhausting experience of growing up under constant studio lights. The two of them were raised side by side on neighboring sets, passing each other in hallways lined with cables and heavy lights buzzing overhead.
And so I recognize that ambition, that idea to go beyond, to keep reaching, to keep trying to come up with something else for audiences.
They were kids earning paychecks before they could even spell their names, saying lines before they had any idea who they really were. In an industry that demanded perfection instead of patience, Clint was Ron's reminder that he wasn't alone, that someone else knew exactly how strange their childhood really was. They weren't just brothers. They were co-workers, confidants, and survivors of a Hollywood childhood no outsider could ever fully imagine. But adulthood brought challenges neither of them expected. While Ron was directing major films and becoming one of the most trusted names in the industry, Clint was quietly fighting battles of his own. The pressure, the pace, the constant judgment, it all took its toll. By the late 1980s, things had spiraled to a breaking point, and Ron could only watch in fear as his brother slipped further away from the life they'd built together. In 1990, completely heartbroken and desperate to help, Ron finally drew a line, delivering an ultimatum that would test the strength of their bond and change both of their lives forever. Get help or lose me forever. Those were the words Ron Howard told his brother in 1990, not out of anger, but out of love so fierce it scared him. Clint chose to fight back, choosing recovery over destruction, and it saved him. By 2021, the Howard brothers had gone fully public with their story in their heartfelt memoir, The Boys, where they credited brutal honesty and unshakable family love for pulling Clint back from the edge. But now, decades later, a new fear has entered Ron's life, one he can't outwork, can't plan his way around. Clint has been facing a serious health battle, one Ron described only as life-altering. The details remain private, but his voice, his posture, and that heavy look in his eyes have said more than any press statement ever could. This isn't a small setback. It's the kind of illness that rewires everything. It shifts a family's heartbeat, turning long days into hospital visits and long nights into quiet worry that never ends. For a man who's built his entire life around control, around calling the shots, fixing the problems, rewriting the endings, this has been a brutal awakening. Ron can't yell, "Cut." He can't reset the scene. He can't protect his brother the way Clint once protected him when the cameras got too heavy and fame felt too lonely. For the first time in decades, Ron has admitted something the world never expected to hear from him. He's scared. Not of failure, not of losing momentum, not of critics or pressure, but of losing the one person who's been beside him through every twist of his story. That raw, fragile honesty, that helpless love, changed him in ways even his closest friends noticed. And it's this exact pain that shaped his reaction when he heard the news about Rob Reiner. Because as Clint's health worsened, Ron found himself forced to face a truth he'd buried for years, that no matter how many awards, no matter how perfect the frame, no matter how carefully you plan the ending, some stories are beyond your control. The man who spent half a century guiding Hollywood with calm precision, crafting stories that touched millions, is now facing something he can't direct, fix, or plan his way out of. For the first time, Ron Howard has had to look directly at his own fragility, stripped of cameras, applause, or the comfort of creative control. In recent interviews, Ron confessed that what he's going through with Clint's health has shaken him deeper than any setback in his entire career. Not the letdown of ED-TV, not the pressure behind Apollo 13, not even the uphill battle of Solo, a Star Wars story. None of it compares to the raw, paralyzing fear of losing his brother. He described long, sleepless nights, replaying their childhood like a film reel. The tiny schoolroom at Desilu Studios, the hushed talks between scenes, the way Clint's presence used to make those freezing, fluorescent-lit stages feel warm again. What were once sweet, nostalgic memories have now turned into reminders of everything he stands to lose.
When the interview was over, he was taking me over and playing me, tracks he just recorded. And, here he was, like, he couldn't contain himself. I mean, he'd start moving and kind of dancing and singing along with the lyrics and stopping and making changes and talking to the engineer. And I could just see how energized he was by the creativity of the moment.
Ron opened up about a guilt that runs deep. Guilt that while his own career soared to unimaginable heights, Clint was quietly fighting his own battles behind the scenes. Guilt that he didn't see the warning signs sooner. Guilt that he couldn't protect his brother the way Clint once shielded him from the loneliness of growing up in front of cameras. That heavy regret has reshaped everything about the way Ron lives now. This new chapter, one built on love, fear, and hard-won wisdom, has forced him to slow down. He's stepped back from long, exhausting productions, turning down projects that would pull him away from home for months at a time. Even Imagine Entertainment, the powerhouse studio he co-founded in 1985, now runs more independently, giving him something he once thought impossible: time. No more endless call sheets, no more 18-hour days. These days, Ron Howard's life revolves around the people who have always mattered most: his family, his brother, and the fragile beauty of simply being present. And it's this grounded, vulnerable version of Ron that makes his reflections on Rob Reiner's legacy feel even more powerful. One legend quietly honoring another, both men shaped by love, loss, and the cost of caring too deeply. These days, Ron Howard's world moves at a different rhythm, slower, softer, and centered around what truly matters. Family dinners, quiet conversations, and those small, irreplaceable moments he once let slip away are now the heartbeat of his life. He's made it clear. He refuses to lose them again. And in one of the most emotional confessions of his entire career, Ron admitted that the silence between projects has opened his eyes in ways nothing else ever could. For the first time, he dared to say it out loud. He spent decades telling everyone else's stories, but forgot to tell his own. Now, standing at 71, with a legacy worth over $200 million and a lifetime of triumphs behind him, he's finally realizing that all those awards and hit films mean nothing if the people you love start to fade from your world. Fans were stunned, not by the fact that Ron had struggled, but by the revelation that he carried so much pain in total silence. The man everyone saw as calm, steady, and endlessly kind had been fighting private battles for years without ever showing the cracks. And when he finally spoke, the heartbreak was undeniable. Some wounds, it turns out, never fully heal, even for one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. But just as Ron began finding peace in this slower, more grounded chapter of his life, the world around him shattered once again. Another kind of loss, sudden, shocking, and deeply painful, ripped through the industry. The devastating news of Rob Reiner's passing hit like a storm no one saw coming. Ron was already standing on emotional thin ice, grappling with his brother Clint's worsening condition, weighed down by fear, guilt, and regret. And then came the headline that stopped him cold: Rob Reiner, gone at 78. His wife, Michelle Singer, too. The tragedy sent shockwaves across Hollywood, leaving friends, fans, and colleagues speechless. For Ron, it wasn't just another news story. It was a gut punch from life itself. He had already been facing the heartbreak of watching someone he loved slip away, and now he was confronted with the loss of another person who had defined so much of his own journey. And as the industry reeled, Ron Howard, the man who always stayed composed, found himself shaken in a way that words could barely capture. Ron Howard, a man known for his calm composure and quiet control, was completely blindsided by what happened to Rob Reiner. The suddenness, the horror, the sheer intensity of it all left him shaken to his core. Ron had always respected Rob, not just as a filmmaker, but as a force of nature. Rob's fierce energy, his razor-sharp humor, and his fearless activism had always stood in perfect contrast to Ron's own quiet, methodical style. Yet beneath those differences, they shared the same creative fire that only true storytellers understand. Both men had grown up inside the demanding world of Hollywood, molded by cameras and expectations since childhood. Both had battled through studio politics, fought for creative control, and carried the invisible pressure of keeping their work authentic in an industry that constantly pushed for compromise. They were two sides of the same coin, one loud and impassioned, the other patient and precise, but both deeply driven by the same obsession with truth. So when the terrible report surfaced, the reality hit like a punch to the chest. The details were graphic, the kind of thing that made the entire entertainment world fall silent. Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer, had both been found gone under horrifying circumstances. Their daughter, Rory, discovering them in what police called a violent scene. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't gentle. It was shocking and incomprehensible. An ending that no one could process. Least of all, Ron. Already struggling with the emotional toll of his brother Clint's declining health, this tragedy struck him on a completely different level.
He went through a tough time back in the day with drugs and alcohol.
Well, boy, that was a difficult, heartbreaking time and thing to witness, and it was terrifying.
Those close to Ron said he was visibly shaken, haunted not only by the loss of a friend and peer, but by the sheer brutality of it all. It's beyond comprehension, one insider shared quietly. Ron just kept repeating, how could this happen to Rob? How could this happen to Michelle? For a man who had spent his life controlling chaos through storytelling, this moment shattered every illusion of order he had left. And as the world searched for answers, Ron Howard found himself staring straight into the kind of darkness he had spent his entire career trying to make sense of. And this time, there was no script to fix it. The tragedy shook Ron Howard to his core. It shattered his sense of safety and tore apart the order he thought he understood. The outpouring of grief for Rob Reiner was massive, flooding social media and news outlets with love, heartbreak, and disbelief. It proved just how deeply Rob had touched people, not only through his films, but through his voice, his courage, and his passion for truth. But for Ron, that grief carried another layer, a painfully personal reflection. As the tributes poured in, he couldn't help but see his own ongoing struggle with loss mirrored right back at him. He had always admired Rob's boldness, his willingness to speak up, to jump into debates that most directors would avoid. Ron, on the other hand, had always taken the quieter route, showing people who they are through story rather than telling them what to think. But in this moment of shared pain, all those differences dissolved. There were no sides, no styles, no personas. Only heartbreak, only the fragile humanity that connects us all. Those close to Ron said he was haunted by thoughts of Rob and Michelle's final moments. Already raw from his brother Clint's illness and the fear of time slipping away, this tragedy hit him in the most personal way imaginable. He thought back to Reiner's final interview, the one that left fans and friends in tears, where Rob spoke so beautifully about love, family, and legacy. The irony cut deep. Rob had reflected on mortality with such peace and grace, never imagining his story would end so violently. In a rare public statement shared quietly without any Hollywood polish, Ron expressed his grief in simple, heartfelt words. He spoke of Rob not just as the actor, director, or activist, but as the man behind all that, a man devoted to love, truth, and family. He praised the way Rob used his platform to challenge the world, to make people think, even when they didn't always agree. This kind of senseless loss, Ron said softly. It makes you question everything. It makes you hold your loved ones closer. His voice, usually so steady, cracked as he added, Rob and Michelle were passionate people, devoted to each other and to making a difference. That's the kind of legacy you never forget. Their loss, in such a devastating, senseless way, is a wound to us all, Ron Howard said, his voice trembling with emotion. My heart goes out to their children, especially to Rory, who found them. No one should ever have to face something so heartbreaking. Those words, quiet but heavy, captured the ache of an entire community mourning two lives that had meant so much to so many. Ron went on to reflect on something deeply personal, the shared journey that he, Rob Reiner, and so many others had taken. "We grow up together in this business," he said softly. "Some of us from the time we're kids. We become witnesses to each other's stories, the highs, the lows, the moments no one else ever sees." He paused, then added, "When something like this happens, it stops you. It forces you to really see how fragile it all is, how unpredictable, how easily it can all change in a single moment."
And Dad really helped him turn that corner. I think Dad did his very best parenting.
For Ron, who was already struggling with the fear of losing his brother Clint, the shock of Rob and Michelle's passing felt like a painful echo of everything he was already living through. It was a cruel reminder that no matter how much control you try to hold on to, life will always find ways to remind you who's really in charge. The tragedy didn't just break his heart, it deepened his understanding of what truly matters. It reinforced every truth he had recently come to embrace, the vow to slow down, to be present, to hold on to family tighter than ever before. The realization that he had spent decades telling the world stories while silencing his own now carried even more weight. The heartbreaking end of Rob Reiner's life, a man who had lived boldly, loved loudly, and created endlessly, became more than just a loss. For Ron Howard, it was a mirror, a warning, and a lesson all at once. It reminded him, and everyone watching, that no matter how bright the lights of Hollywood shine, the real legacy is what happens off camera, in the time we share, the people we hold close, and the love we never take for granted. In the weeks that followed Rob Reiner's tragic passing, a strange, unspoken tension began to surface around Ron Howard, not from anger or blame, but from the heavy swirl of unfinished history between the two men. Their friendship had always carried layers that outsiders never fully understood. Beneath the public admiration and professional respect, there had also been rivalry, quiet, complicated, and sometimes sharp enough to sting. Rob and Ron had always walked parallel paths in Hollywood, each carving out his own empire. Both sons of the industry, both storytellers who understood the cost of greatness, yet their philosophies couldn't have been more different. Rob Reiner was loud, fearless, unfiltered. He believed in shaking the table to make change happen. Ron Howard was the opposite, careful, composed, always choosing subtlety over spectacle. And though they respected each other deeply, that difference sometimes sparked friction that ran deeper than anyone ever realized. There were whispers, even among close friends, that the two had quietly competed for the same projects over the years. Scripts passed between studios, producers torn between Reiner's fire and Howard's finesse. It was never public, never petty, but it was real. They were like two planets locked in the same orbit, drawn together by respect, yet pushed apart by pride. Now, in the wake of Rob's loss, that tension feels haunting. People close to Ron say he's been replaying old conversations, moments when he could have reached out, but didn't. Industry insiders remember seeing them at events, exchanging polite smiles, their warmth always wrapped in a layer of professional distance. They admired each other, one longtime friend said, but they also challenged each other, maybe more than either of them wanted to admit. And now, with Reiner gone, Ron is left carrying that weight, the guilt of a friendship that was never fully resolved, the ache of rivalry without reconciliation. In one recent interview, when asked about Rob, Ron paused for a long time before speaking. His voice dropped low. "We didn't always see eye to eye, but he made me better. Maybe I just never told him that." That single line, quiet, simple, and loaded with emotion, told the whole story. Two men who built Hollywood legacies side by side, forever linked by respect, rivalry, and the haunting question of what might have been said if there had been just one more conversation. As the weeks turned into months, the tension between Rob Reiner's legacy and Ron Howard's reflection only deepened. Hollywood was still grieving, but behind the candlelight tributes and award show dedications, something else was stirring. The quiet unraveling of untold truths between two men who had shaped an entire generation of cinema. Insiders began revisiting moments from the past, subtle exchanges that suddenly seemed heavier in hindsight. There had always been an undercurrent between Rob and Ron. Not hostility, but that electric tension that comes when two perfectionists see pieces of themselves in each other.
I don't know if it's because I grew up in a household of workaday actors who didn't have that kind of status, or whether it's I just recognize that it's a way of life. There's a lot of showmanship. There's a lot of hype. I sort of refuse to invest too much in status or rankings or whatnot.
Rob's intensity often pushed Ron to take bolder creative risks, while Ron's patience and precision forced Rob to slow down and think deeper. They weren't enemies. They were mirrors, reflecting the parts of one another they couldn't face. In interviews, Ron began to speak more openly about that dynamic. Rob and I didn't compete the way people think, he said carefully. It wasn't about box office or acclaim. It was about something else, about legacy, about meaning. His eyes lingered, as if searching for the right words. We pushed each other without even trying to. I think we both wanted to outdo the silence between us. That single sentence sent ripples through the industry, a quiet admission that there had always been more beneath their polite exchanges and red carpet smiles. There were stories of meetings that ended in creative disagreements, of studio pitches where both men unknowingly circled the same scripts, of a phone call that was never returned after a misinterpreted comment. Tiny moments that seemed irrelevant back then, now pulsed with unspoken regret. Ron's friends say he's been digging through old photos and letters, even rewatching Stand By Me and A Few Good Men, films he once praised publicly but privately analyzed for what Reiner had done differently. And when asked recently what he would say to Rob if he could speak to him one last time, Ron's answer silenced the room. I'd tell him we were both wrong. It was never a competition. We were trying to say the same thing, just in two different languages. That admission hit deep because maybe, beneath the rivalry, beneath the awards and the admiration, what bound Ron Howard and Rob Reiner most wasn't competition at all. It was the shared ache of artists trying to make sense of the same fragile, unpredictable world. By early 2026, the story of Rob Reiner's passing had begun to fade from headlines. But for Ron Howard, it hadn't faded at all. It lingered in every thought, every interview, every quiet moment when the cameras stopped rolling. What the world saw as closure, Ron experienced as a wound that refused to heal. Because the truth wasn't just about grief, it was about everything left unsaid between two men who had once walked side by side in Hollywood's blinding light. He found himself replaying their last real conversation, years before Rob's death, at a charity event in Beverly Hills. The crowd was buzzing, flashes everywhere, and yet the moment between them was almost eerily calm. Rob had laughed and said, "You know, Ronnie, we're both control freaks pretending we're easygoing guys." Ron had smiled, but deep down the words hit home. That was Reiner, direct, insightful, and just a little too honest. Ron never forgot it, and now, with Rob gone, that line echoed in his head like a haunting refrain he couldn't silence. Friends say Ron has been working on something quietly, not a blockbuster, not a studio project, but something deeply personal, a script. One inspired by two filmmakers, their shared beginnings, and the invisible rivalry that shaped them both. It's not about Rob exactly, one source explained, but you can feel him in every line. It's like Ron's writing the conversation they never got to finish. There's talk that the script might be his most emotional work yet. Part tribute, part confession, part farewell. Ron hasn't said if he'll ever release it, but those who've read early drafts say it's filled with raw honesty, pain, and admiration. The story centers on two storytellers who keep trying to outdo each other, only to realize too late that they were both reaching for the same truth all along. When asked recently if the project was connected to Reiner, Ron only gave a faint smile and said, "Let's just say it's about what happens when you lose the person who understood you the most, even when you didn't understand each other." And just like that, it became clear. Ron Howard wasn't trying to escape the tension anymore. He was finally turning it into art. And that's where the story finally lands, not with a clean resolution, but with the quiet truth of two men who spent their lives trying to tell the world's stories, while still searching for their own. Ron Howard and Rob Reiner, two names forever tied to Hollywood's golden age, each left a mark that can't be erased. One, the careful craftsman who built worlds out of emotion and empathy. The other, the fearless voice who challenged the world to think, to feel, to speak up. different paths, different styles, but the same fire burning at their core, the need to make meaning out of the chaos of life. In the wake of Rob's loss, Ron stands not as a rival, not as a peer, but as a man changed, softer, more reflective, finally at peace with the idea that legacy isn't about perfection, it's about connection. His story, Rob's story, Clint's story, they're all reminders that behind the cameras, the headlines, and the awards, these are real lives unfolding, full of love, regret, and resilience. And maybe that's what makes it all so powerful, because at the end of every film, every career, every friendship, there's still that one shared truth. We only get so much time, and it's up to us to make it count. So what do you think? Was their quiet rivalry a curse or a hidden gift? Did it push them toward greatness or keep them from finding peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know what you think about the untold tension between Ron Howard and Rob Reiner. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can uncover the side of Hollywood no one talks about. Every click helps us keep bringing you these deep, emotional looks into the lives behind the legends. Because some stories don't end when the credits roll. Sometimes they just begin to make sense.